Skeptic Haven. Today is November 23rd, 2025. I'm Jim Barrows, and with me this evening is Erin Louis. If you believe in a God, call in at 984-400-5656 or hit our URL at https://www.callinstudio.com.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
For Sunday evening, pretty darn good. So for those who don't know you, want to give us a brief bio?
I am Erin Louis. I am an author and a atheist advocate. Currently, I am the president of the board of the Greater Sacramento chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I've written several books on critical thinking and humanism. Also, I was a former exotic dancer, so I've written quite a bit about that. And I think that's about it.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we do not have any calls, folks, and this is a call-in show. And it'd be nice to have some callers. So what got you into, were you always a skeptic or?
I don't know. I guess I was probably always a pain in the ass when it came to like my my questions and stuff when I was a kid. I grew up Catholic-ish. What I guess I refer to as like soft Catholic. So I grew up in Southern California, so that was like Orange County, basically right next to Disneyland. My father was a small business owner. So basically my Catholicism kind of more revolved around like tax evasion and alcoholism. Reagan was our prophet. We worshiped at them all, kind of a thing.
Right.
So like we didn't read the Bible. It was basically be a good person and you won't go to hell. That was kind of like the gist.
Right.
I was baptized, but I never had communion. But I am the last of 6 kids, which is probably the most like Catholic thing about me. So my five siblings are 9 to 14 years older than me, and they all had more of a traditional Catholic upbringing. But there was such a gap between me and them that by the time I came around, it was like, good enough. Hopefully she won't burn. And that was it. So pretty much everything I learned about religion, I learned after I let it all go. But it really started for me when we had a pretty awful death in the family, and I started to basically look for existence of like an afterlife or a soul or all that kind of stuff. And when I started to actually look for like evidence, I didn't find any, and that sort of led to me losing a belief not just in the afterlife but then God. And then I was also a ghost hunter for a really long time. So
cool.
Well, I think like when I look back to how I let that go, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that believing in ghosts basically means there has to be something after here. And I think that was a lot harder for me to let go of than like the idea of God, because the idea of somebody watching over us and granting our silly little wishes while they let other people like starve and die to death is probably not a thing. So God wasn't as hard for me to let go of as the idea of like a soul and an afterlife. And so I had a point where I went through like an energy phase and a universe phase. I think I was a witch for like 6 months when I was 16. But yeah, a lot of things just didn't make sense. And so it was,
very similar. I'm a recovering Catholic as well. But yeah, my parents sent me to, parochial school, and my dad was in the Air Force. So every time we moved, we'd have to get on a waiting list to go to a Catholic school. So my sister and I would go to public school while we were waiting to come up on the list. So I got the best of both worlds, or the worst. And, went to school, and when we were going to or we were going to public school, we were doing CCD and that whole 9 yards. But
What's
yeah,
CCD?
that is a after school Catholic education for kids who are going to public school. So it's just basically, yeah, it's just an education. It's another class you got to take if you're a
Oh,
Christian or a Catholic and your parents want you to go. I forget what CCD even stands for anymore. Um,
Catholic something?
yeah, Catholic's got to be in there
Gotta be
somewhere.
one of the C's.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds terrible. I'm sorry.
Confraternity of Christian Doctrine, which is religious education. Yeah, that's what it is. No wonder I don't know what CCD stands for. What is Confraternity of Christian Doctrine? Wow. That's the first time I think I've ever looked that up.
That's funny.
Yeah, and I started getting into Catholic apologetics as I wanted to get to know my faith better, and then was like, wait a minute, none of this works. None of this works.
Yeah, for me, there was definitely a lot of like contradictions. It was a lot of like, well, like one of the first things I wrote actually was for Free Thought Today, Freedom from Religion Foundation's newsletter,
mhm.
and it was called "The Bible Taught Me That God Is a Jerk." It's not the original title. The original title was "God Is a Dick,"
Yeah,
um, and I used the Noah's Ark story as kind of an idea between
yeah,
like the contradiction in morals and like ethics and like kindness. Like that's not like a kind God.
no,
Because
no.
even if well, he had the choice apparently
Hmm.
to like not murder everybody. He could have really just like fixed people, right?
Right,
Like he didn't have to like he could just like wave his wand or whatever and make it happen. But then he also like murdered all the animals too. Um,
right.
so it's like even if you could get past the whole like logistics of the arc thing, like no way being a possible thing, I couldn't get past like the morality of it, like, and what the
Hmm.
fuck did the animals do? And like, was literally every single person except for this one family like cool, and
Right.
everybody else just like was bad? Um, and then how
To
many
include
pregnant
pregnant
women did he
women, right?
drown? Huh?
Yeah, well, pregnant women too, right?
Well,
For
yeah. And so then what did they
the
do?
anti-abortion crowd, you know, he killed pregnant women too. So, yeah, and I
So
think
that was hard for me. Yeah.
yeah, the fact that it's a myth, I think, makes it worse, right? Because this means that God put it in the Bible as a teaching tool to teach us what? To fear God because he will wipe us out if we don't.
Well, and that's kind of the epitome as a, I mean, I don't know, as you know, growing up and when I was going through puberty and, you know, my mom's talking to me about boys and all that kind of stuff. I mean, one of the biggest things was, you know, my mom definitely gave me a
Mhm.
list of like flags and, you know, threatening somebody to love them would be pretty high up on that list. So that's another one of those things that just doesn't like jive with this whole like good thing. He's can't be a good person or a
Yeah,
good deity or can't be all good. He can't, you know, so
right.
it was just kind of one of those things that never worked, but it was also something you weren't supposed to question, which, you
Mhm.
know, immediately when I was a kid was kind of like, well, why? Because I was the why kid. You know, why this, why that, why
The
this, why that.
inquisitive
And you
one,
start
right?
telling me it's fucking magic, but then you tell me that magic is also not real. Well, now I'm really having a problem here. Um, but I didn't really like start getting involved in the activist community and certainly never intended to be an activist. But I had a large church, which is actually still really freaking problematic,
Mhm.
in the greater Sacramento area, that had done a free bike giveaway, at my son's elementary school. Um, and it was like it made it look like the whole school won a bike, a free bike. But to get the bike,
Uh-oh.
um, they had to go to a church event, but it didn't say that on the flyer. And, you know, my kid's all excited to run a free bike. And I was kind of like, well, you literally just got a free, like a bike for Christmas. And I was like, this has to be for underprivileged kids. I'm like, bud, either you're donating the bike you have or you're donating this bike you won, because there's no reason you need to have two brand new bikes.
Right.
And he was cool with that. He was just excited that he won something, you know. And then when I dug into it deeper and found out it was the school actually promoting a church event, well, then that was when
Right.
I got involved. And I happened to be following some stuff on Facebook, Freedom from Religion Foundation, and I messaged them. They asked me to get proof of what it was, and I did. And that was kind of the end of that. I ended up becoming a member, and then that was when I submitted that article, went at the convention, and yeah, it was didn't intend to be where I am right now. It just sort of happened. And then it just, I don't know, the deceptiveness is what was really
Mhm.
like not okay. And then the fact that the principal, because it was Christian, just assumed that it was good and it was good intentions. This was so great. And it was like, but you're
Right.
conflating, you know, Christianity with goodness. And there's a lot of really shitheads, you know, that are Christians. And not to mention, not everybody at the school is a Christian. So now you're, you know,
Right.
so, and my kid ended
Yeah.
up getting bullied after that because they knew that he's the one that stopped their free bike or whatever. Not that they weren't still allowed to not go, but just the school didn't, you know.
Yeah.
So,
If a church has enough money to buy kids a bike for attending a service, wouldn't that money be better spent on the poor and feeding people?
well, and see,
Not
that was the other biggest tell is that my son was in special ed. He's on the spectrum.
right.
And so he was actually in a school that wasn't his home school. So I had to drive him to a town over. And at the time, I was looking for a house to buy a house. And in this particular area, the median home price was a lot, even for California.
Mhm.
Um, Definitely upper middle class. And so when I went to the principal and was asking her about, well, you know, what is this? And she goes, well, we're a Title I school. Because I was like, well, why did the kids in this school in particular need a free bike from a church? Um, and she's like, well, we're a Title I. And I was like, but we all know that that's crap because everybody's always pushing us to fill out the applications for the, you know, for the thing. And if your income limit isn't low enough for them to qualify for as a Title I school, they don't want your
Right.
application anymore. And so I was like, this is not an underprivileged community. I was like, there are plenty of other schools where you could really make a kid's day by giving them a bike. My kid,
Yeah.
on the other hand, had literally just got a new bike. Like,
Right.
no problem, no struggle, no nothing. We didn't get free lunch mostly because um I wouldn't make you know, I didn't have him sign up for school lunch or do anything like that. We never took anything we certainly didn't need. And so that was kind of the biggest tell. And that's what I told the principal. I was like, you think that they're trying to help these kids, or you think that they're trying to target their parents for donations? Because that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, they always got their hand out, right? And isn't there something in the Bible about God will take care of you? Like the birds don't worry about getting fed, so why should a church worry about getting money? Why do they have to beg?
I mean, well, the other thing too is now that I actually run my own nonprofit,
Right.
um, and I'm starting to look at like the tax implications, and like I'm like really, really conscious of every penny that goes out the door. Anything that comes out of our account is accounted for, and I'm very careful about what's coming in versus what's going out. I'm highly aware that people are giving the chapter money so that we can make the most of it. I don't want people feeling like they're getting their donations so that, the board can go out to dinner or do whatever. I want it to be right there. But tax wise, we have to file that. We have to prove that. We have to show
Mhm.
where everything went, where everything came in. And churches aren't like that. So I'm not necessarily a tax the churches person. I think that um, if churches are using their donations for good and like they're supposed to be doing, I think they should be required to have the same tax requirements as we do. They
Yeah.
they should have to
Absolutely.
show, because if they did, you wouldn't have people flying around in private jets and having big mansions and shit like that. I'm not gonna,
Joel
so
Osteen, who had to be shamed into opening his church in Houston, which was a stadium for a sports stadium at one time, to house people because of the Houston flooding several years ago. Um, but real quick, let me interrupt our train of thought here to say, hey, folks, we need some callers. We need some folks to talk to. We will give priority to theists of any kind, but if you're an atheist and just want to hang out, that would be cool too. We don't have any callers, so lines are open. But yeah, it's, and I just understand this is your first time doing a call-in show.
I did the hang up with Matt Dillahunty.
Oh, cool.
I don't know when it was, that like last year, a couple years ago.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Matt's fun to work with. I worked with him quite a bit, and enjoyed working with him, especially when he gets upset.
yeah, that's it's funny because it makes me like less upset. Like I feel like I have to be like calm.
Yes.
Like, and then I'm not
Yeah.
really sure like how to, well, because I guess sometimes I wonder if the people that are calling in were serious, or if they like, I don't know. That was an interesting show. It was definitely an
Yeah.
interesting show.
Yeah. So yeah. And it's always interesting when Christians won't, theists of any stripe really don't want to answer a question because they can see what the answer is going to mean for them. And so that's the hard part sometimes, is getting them to answer a yes or no question, or answer the question being asked, because they want to shift. Because as soon as you back them in their corner, they want to shift to something else. They're not in that corner anymore. So
Yeah, and the other thing about Matt in particular, he's really, really knowledgeable on the Bible and the Bible stories and things like that. And I am not, like I said, because I was raised Catholic, we didn't read the Bible, and so I didn't. It makes it hard for me to answer a lot of those questions when it comes to
mhm.
like the scripture. So my like when I started to let go of religion was just super easy, but when I started to let go of just my belief in anything supernatural, it all comes from a place of skepticism and science and critical thinking.
Mhm.
So it really wasn't like, for me, the Bible is totally irrelevant. It can't possibly be proof of anything. It's been edited so many times. There's no, like, for me, it just doesn't make any logistical sense that God's word needed an editor. I don't even like having an editor sometimes. So
Right. But
I
yeah,
and
if
it's
why?
so manipulatable that there's no it seems ridiculous to me that the Bible in any space at all is considered proof of anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, Christians especially tend to get upset when you say, "Well, that means your belief in the Bible means that Spider-Man exists," because Spider-Man takes place in New York. Lots of stuff that is true is there, therefore Peter Parker exists and Spider-Man exists. It's like, wait, because it's at best historical fiction. And so you have to go through and look at everything in order to and evaluate it, critically think about it, to know what's going on, and even start thinking about it. I mean, something's like the flood. You'd ask yourself just a couple of questions about the flood, like, well, did the Chinese know about it? Did anybody else know about it? I mean, what other civilizations out there knew about it? And if there are none, then what do you do about that? What does that mean? How does that affect things? Uh, you can look at, what does it really mean if someone came back, and why don't we have more evidence than we do? Because the New Testament sounds to me like just a series of apologetics. Some guy says, I was a witness and he rose from the dead. Well, how do you know? Because people who are crucified would end up thrown into a mass grave. So there's no way to prove it at that point. So you invent a tomb. Oh, he's in a tomb, and a tomb was empty. Oh, well, somebody stole the body. Oh, there were Roman guards. Oh, you get this whole thing of adding more stuff just to make the story better. Eh,
I read a book by David Fitzgerald called Nailed 10 Christian Myths That Jesus Existed.
mhm,
And I think that was where I really started to question just the existence of that particular person at all. Um, and I will say that I'm still on the fence because the Bible, even as a historical document, is so um, unprovable.
mhm,
Um, but I do think it's possible that a person named Jesus existed. As I started to write fiction and started to kind of understand, or at least think more mechanically and logically
mhm.
about how to build a story and how to build characters and things like that, it seems more logical to me that Jesus was probably a conglomeration of people that existed. I know when I write a character, there's always somebody I know that is integrated into that, right? Because if I'm writing
Right.
and I'm building a believable character, I want to use traits of actual people. And so when it comes to whether Jesus existed at all, that's kind of what I go back to is the idea of writing fiction that maybe there are people or somebody when the authors were writing it that influenced that particular character, or perhaps there was somebody named Jesus. I don't think he turned water into
Yeah.
wine, but or walked on
Well,
water or
there's all of his
died and came back to
miracles.
life.
Yeah. Well, all of his miracles can be done by a stage magician. The water and the wine is just, a trick decanter. Um, you can do the walk on water if you can hide what you're walking on under the water. I mean, it's just stage magic. So he could have done all those things, but because we can see stage magicians doing them today. Some of these things are still being done in India by so-called magic men, today. So he could have done all those things, but it doesn't mean that he was doing it supernaturally. And if you said you take it as a historical document, well, there are a number of historical documents that have supernatural things in them, but we ignore those supernatural things. So if a Christian wants us to take the Bible as a historical document, the first thing we have to do is toss all of the supernatural. And then the Bible admits that if Jesus Christ didn't rise from the dead, then we don't have any faith. There's nothing to our faith, and that's where they end up.
Well, and I think that's where the hard part comes in is having some kind of a faith without evidence. And I think that's where the threats come in, and I think that's where the manipulation comes in, and the you know,
Mhm,
I think that's where we end up running into problems. We had a guy named John Fuselgang, and because I don't really listen to podcasts and I don't
mhm,
like watch a lot of YouTube or anything like that, so like I didn't know who he was. Obviously, just happened so many times when I show up at a convention and somebody starts to speak, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, this person!" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, they seem great, but I have no idea who they are." Um, but he spoke, and he's a Christian, and he was basically talking about his book that just came out called The Separation of Church and Hate, which I listened to. And I will say, as an atheist and a skeptic, it was hard to kind of put that aside, because I wouldn't say he was promoting Christianity, but I will say he's promoting the best parts of it.
mhm,
Um, and because so much of the convention was political, FFRF is predominantly
mhm.
lawyers, right? Like constitutional
Right,
lawyers, and that's what they do. So our concern right now is basically losing control of a secular government. And
right.
so he was talking a lot about bringing in progressive Christians, which
Mhm,
frankly I'm not even sure that's like a even an accurate word, because if you listen to how he tells it, how he explains the stories in the Bible and the Jesus of the Bible and what he taught as far as taking in the poor, immigrants, even women and abortion and gay and like all that stuff, there wasn't anything in there that is really inherently bad. It's just that it gets
right.
twisted. Um, and it gets used for those purposes. And, he's really saying that which I guess I would say kind of loosely what I was taught when I was growing up is that, Christianity means love, and it means, taking care of people, and, taking care of disadvantaged people and things like that. And that's Minerva. She's annoyed because I shut the door and I didn't know she was in the closet.
Oh,
I know. Um, so I might have to let her out in a second if she starts becoming too annoying.
no worries. I've got a dog
But
at my feet, so we may hear her at some point too.
yeah, I know yeah. So I know.
You have to go on ahead and let her out. Poor thing.
No, she's okay.
Oh yeah.
But she basically what he was saying is he's talking about like what I was taught when we talk about the Bible and
Mhm.
what it teaches you morals and be kind to people and all that kind of stuff. And he was talking about how it's basically been co-opted politically and things like that. But people that still believe that and actually take the words of Jesus in the Bible as however it was written, whatever version they're looking at, is that it really is kindness, and what they're talking about us in the political realm, specifically one end of the spectrum of the political realm at the moment, is really taking stuff out of context in a way to just be mean and selfish. And it's kind of the antithesis of what Jesus taught. And I can get behind that Jesus, his version
Right.
of Christianity. I'm cool with.
Yeah. There's the ACA in Austin sometimes works with a church and will rent their facilities for things that the ACA does. Um, and their pastor is an out atheist, even though he preaches at a Christian church. And you walk in there, and there's not a lot of Christian stuff in there, but there's a lot of really positive stuff. So I think progressive works. And the people who live closest to the Bible are probably Westboro Baptist Church, and they are horrible people, but I think they're great Christians. They're great biblical Christians, because the Bible, the Old and New Testament, are full of really God doing horrible things for horrible reasons. He violates free will, and that's just looking at the Pharaoh in Egypt and the Exodus story. There's one, but in modern times, we would consider a CEO making a pass at a secretary as also being, shall we say, highly problematic. Um, and here you have God, who's more powerful than a CEO, talking to a young woman who, doesn't have the experience or anything else. How is that not a problem? I'm trying not to get banned by YouTube, but um, how is that not the same thing?
Well, I guess I would ask the question, being a Bible layman, what's the difference between what God taught and what Jesus taught?
Um,
Because was Jesus ever promoting that stuff? Because he's really the main
Depends on
character
how
of the
you stack
Bible,
your
right?
quotes. It depends on how
Huh?
you stack the quotes. Um, there is a Bible quote that says that the old laws won't be changed by one jot or one tittle. Everything, all the old laws are there. So the old slavery law that allows you to beat your slave as long as he doesn't die within 3 days, it's okay. If he dies on the fourth day, you're not punished. So all those old laws and all those old ways are still there. Now, progressive Christians there's another quote that they use to get away from that, talking about how he's come to fulfill the law and create a new covenant. And so they usually use that. So it depends on how, again, it's all in interpretation, right? And how many, I think it really comes down to how many quotes can you stack, and whoever has the most quotes wins.
I read another book called Secular Buddhism,
Oh,
which
yeah.
actually gave me, have you read that?
No, Buddhism has some supernatural things to it, but it is an atheist religion. There is no God, so to speak. And most Buddhists claim to be. Most of the Buddhists I've talked to have said that they are atheist. They
Yeah, and
believe the supernatural side, right? But so there's a dichotomy there, a little difference, but yeah.
well, it depends on how they because they deified Buddha after he died. So in that respect, my understanding was that they do still believe in a god. It's just that they deified a human after he died. But what I really took from that book was the tenets of Buddhism. And I remember when I was done reading it, thinking if I were going to pick a religion, this would be it.
Hmm.
Um, but the main principles was that it was really a humanist religion, right?
Hmm.
It was basically based on humanism and caring for other
Right.
people and caring for animals, caring for the earth, and things like that. So I took a lot away from that book as far as it being a good guide for ethics and morality.
Hmm.
And when I got done reading or listening to, because like full disclosure, when I read nonfiction, I usually do it audiobooks,
Right.
um, because I'll do it while I'm doing like cardio or something, and so then it'll
Right.
keep me sort of like it makes me engaged. Whereas if I were to do it like listen to a book when I was doing anything else or try to read it or something, it would probably put me to sleep.
Yeah.
So when I was listening to it, and then when I was listening to the separation of church and hate, I really kind of took away the same feelings. Although there's so many more supernatural elements to Christianity than there were in Buddhism. Uh, the main principles that he was touting, and he was a Catholic, I guess, or still a Catholic, was humanist principles, principles that
Hmm.
really kind of existed well before religion at all. Be kind to people and things like that. And so my son had mentioned, I don't know, a while ago when we were talking about Christianity, because he has a few Christian friends, or maybe not even Christian friends, but people that still have a spiritual side or were raised that way or whatever. He's 20. So um, he said he would like to see something like a secular Christianity book, a book on secular Christianity, where you remove that, take all the good parts of like what Jesus taught and things like that, and kind of akin to secular Buddhism, which I think would be a little more difficult.
Have you
But
heard of the Jefferson Bible?
no.
So Thomas Jefferson took the Bible, removed all of the supernatural and problematic parts, and left. And when I say removed, I mean he took a knife and cut it out. Um, and that is the Jefferson Bible. So someone has attempted to get there. Um, but yeah, it's kind of funny when Christians say we're founded on Christian principles. It's like Thomas Jefferson cut your Bible in pieces because he didn't like the supernatural and bad parts. What do you mean we're founded on Christian principles?
Now there is a lot of evidence, empirical evidence that America was not founded on Christianity. Now, we did have
Mhm.
some founding fathers that did think that Christianity was good for the country, but they weren't not necessarily Christians themselves, and they thought that it might be good for the country because it would keep people in check, which I'm not sure is like super altruistic. I don't know if that's such a good thing. They're like, oh well, people can be manipulated into not being assholes by using this if it's done right. Um,
Right.
but that wasn't, the establishment clause in the Constitution is really, which obviously is probably my jam when it comes to activism,
Right.
is pretty clear. It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
There's really not a lot of argument for it, and there's plenty of statements by the founding fathers themselves, Thomas Jefferson, Ben
Right.
Franklin.
And
Um,
the Treaty of Tripoli, which is also law of the land, which denies that we're a Christian nation from the just right there. So that is definitely another piece that people like to ignore, but that is law of the land.
I mean, when you're looking at establishing a democracy, there's really no way to align any kind of supernatural belief, um, to incorporate that into any kind of laws at all, because it is so interpretable, right? If you have a
Hmm.
personal relationship with God or whoever the fuck, and I can't, am I allowed to cuss?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, good.
I think we're
Um,
far enough in that YouTube
I know I
won't.
should have asked earlier. My bad. I usually
Yeah,
ask, and then I thought, oh, it's probably okay. Um, but because it's so manipulatable, it's so malleable, it's so subjective that having any kind of religion in government is basically a recipe for not having a democracy. Like even if you
right.
set out that way, it's never going to work. Um, and so from that standpoint, it's kind of what we're facing right now with a lot of, and we've never really completely gotten religion out of government when we have God on our money. We have oaths to God. There was somebody, man, I can't remember where he was from.
Well, a
Might
lot of
have
that
actually
came
been,
out in the 1950s in
yeah,
response to communism, right? It's not like it was there before. E pluribus unum was our motto, not in God we trust. So, yeah, we had got it
actually,
right for part of our history.
kind of. I think we started, but I do think that yeah, I think the conflation of religion or Christianity with goodness, um, which, like I said before, I think it can be. But it really depends on who's using it and how they're interpreting it. Um, but I think the conflation with that, kind of like the principal at my son's school, was like, oh, well, it's a church, they must be cool. And it's like, that's so not the case. Like, not the case at all.
Yeah,
Even just getting past the fact that you shouldn't be like promoting any kind of religion at all, the fact that you're saying, oh, well, because they believe in this, they're good people. And it's like, they're not. No, that's not like a guarantee. There's a lot of people that, wrap themselves in
yeah.
in that religion because it's more of
Wrap
a
themselves in the
disguise.
cross to do things like sell MLMs. There's a reason why MLMs target Christians and people of faith. And they do
And
target them. You
and
go look at
and
the literature, and
and
they're taken
strippers.
up
Yeah,
right out of there.
actually.
Yeah. Oh, really?
There's a great book also called Little Bosses Everywhere. And that basically explains the way MLMs work and how they target that. And they do that because they tend to be gullible also,
Right.
which is really, not to mention women. They tend to target women.
Hmm.
Um, so that is it's actually kind of a bummer. They're being they were already set up to be manipulated, and so now we have this whole industry that is makes a lot of money on manipulating them.
Yeah.
Same thing a lot with when it comes to sex workers and anti-trafficking groups, which is really rough right now to kind of beat into people's heads, when we obviously have, the Epstein stuff back in the news, which
Right.
frankly it should have been in the news from Jump Street. He never should have gotten that kind of deal, and for technically
Oh,
we wouldn't be here.
just that
But
whole thing.
what
And
it does is
yeah,
create the fact that that is back in the news. It creates an opening for Christian anti-sex work, anti-porn, to be back in the news, and they tend to target consensual sex work, um, pornography, strippers. It's actually one of the reasons why I started writing about dancing, was because there was somebody that I worked with way back in the day, who ended up finding Jesus. And
oh no.
what she did, though, was she talked about women going into any kind of work. They basically took away the any idea that people would choose to do something like that. So they basically painted everybody as victims. And then when they target the girls in particular, when they do find somebody that may have had issues with drugs or maybe are in a bad relationship or something like that, they or people that have been actually trafficked, they
Hmm.
find people that have already been manipulated them or been manipulated into being hurt, and they take that hurt and they manipulate them in the same way, for their own agenda. They're
Hmm.
not going after, they're certainly not interested in labor traffic victims,
Right.
which is the largest human trafficking. And they're not going after like massage parlors. They're not knocking on those doors.
No.
Because that's not who they want. Um, but they basically take the exact same methods that people got into trafficked and how they were trafficked, and they use that, um, to get them into Christianity, which is, you know, still a subservient position. You're
Yes.
still using, that's not a freedom thing. So they lure them in and they take people that are vulnerable in the same way that MLMs do. And I think religion
Mhm.
is a large stepping stone to get there, because you're already preconditioned to believe in shit that ain't true.
Right. Yeah. And it's just they hit you, they try and find any tragedy and people that are and say they're helping, and yet they don't really do that. I was watching Mind Shift, and he had a clip on of a young woman who is a Christian asking Frank Turk a really interesting question. And that is that if you went to a gym if a bunch of fat people went to a gym and didn't get skinny, we wouldn't consider that a good gym. But a whole bunch of people go to church and they don't seem to get better. Why is that if Christianity is true? And I was like, that's a really good question. And the answer, of course, is well, if we associate religiosity and porn use and drug use and violent crime, we see a correlation. Now, I'm not saying causation, but there is a correlation between these things. That the higher the religiosity, the more porn use, the more drug use, and the more violent crime. So, if Christianity is working, why are highly religious places having so many problems? It makes
And
no sense.
okay, so for me, that's my jam. I spent 25 years as a stripper, and I
Okay.
met a lot of religious customers, a lot of religious girls. And it's basically the suppression of healthy sexual feelings and activities and things like that. When you tell somebody that it's evil and bad that they touch themselves when they have feelings that they really can't control, um it's going to manifest itself in really bad ways. And to tout yet another book, Daryl Ray is co-president of Recovering from Religion, and his book, Sex and God: How Religion Poisons, um wait, was it Sex and God? But now I can't remember the subtitle. But that really explains it. And when I listened to that book, a lot of it, that's when a lot of things and experiences, and people that I met, like, really kind of came into
Mhm.
focus. I was like, oh, well, this really explains a lot. That people were suppressed and not able to express themselves, and then they just have a massive amount of guilt around it. Particularly recovering from religion. Um, a couple of years ago, I spoke at the retreat on sexuality, and because it's not really set up like a regular convention, right? You go
Mhm.
and you're really being you're kind of immersed in the attendees there. And that was a lot of my first real, like, close up exposure to people that had had, like, religious trauma, and really some of the most horrific stories I ever heard was that. And I'm talking one on one to people, so I'm really getting a sense of what they went through. And this the sexual control and manipulation that comes with religion is truly one of the most horrible things I can think of, the most damaging things I can think of. I met a lady there she was also a speaker, but she was somebody that taught basically purity culture to girls. And when she was talking about the damage that she knew that she inflicted, it was so incredibly, the guilt that she had over that for what she did. She said, I ruined so many lives. I ruined so many lives. And that kind of thing hit home, coming from my own background where I didn't have
Mhm.
that. When I asked about hell when I was a little kid, am I going to go to hell? Because I stole a cookie or whatever. Actually, I don't think I ever
Sure.
stole a cookie. I stole a candy bar. But they were like, no, 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 you have to be really, really bad to go to hell. And then, because my mom got divorced right after I was born, she deconstructed a lot of her purity culture teachings.
Mhm.
Before she passed, she considered herself a Catholic, and I don't think I knew the term at the time, but she might be what was called a cultural Catholic. So she was
Mhm.
somebody who she liked going to church because she liked her friends there, and she liked
Mhm.
having that sense of community. Um, but she admitted to me, I wish she hadn't in private because it would have made my life a lot easier with my siblings. But she admitted to me that she was really an agnostic. We talked about it, and that was how she felt. But when I was going through puberty and starting to have those feelings, my mom was able to talk to me about it in a very healthy way. And so I
Mhm.
never had any issues with my body, probably fairly obviously. I never had any issues with nudity or sexuality or any of that stuff because she was very open about it. Part of it, she wanted to protect me, but she also wanted to save me from the guilt that she had.
Right.
So getting up and close and personal with people that were raised with religion but not in that way was scary, and it was horrifying.
Yeah.
But
I,
yeah,
I know I know a number of atheist women who have much that same story, and that's something I don't think gets out enough. That we don't really talk enough about as a society. And it's not something that we talk enough about, I think, in atheist circles. Uh, excuse me. The ACA used to have a show, Secular Sexuality, that was really, really good. But that's been the only place I know of that has talked about how, purity culture, anything about sex and doing it and trying to do it in a healthy way and not just go sex is bad. Um, and not making women feel like they're the ones responsible for it because they're not. It takes two to tango, as my parents used to say.
I think that purity culture isn't something that's limited to religion either,
No,
honestly.
yeah,
Because I've experienced as I entered the skeptic and atheist community, I definitely um, occasionally feel like I'm treated slightly different because of my openness about my
hmm
profession. Um, definitely, definitely, I think I've had some, and mind you, I've never had anybody be. I've had people be inappropriate to me in private, but
oh,
not in a way. Well, I think they felt more comfortable in kind of taking a swing they might have not otherwise taken. And then thankfully with each one of those particular incidences, they were people who I knew and respected, and we were able to have a conversation about boundaries and about how that wasn't okay, and how and nothing was ever physical. It was just things people have said to me. But I've also had people make a lot of assumptions, asking me what kind of drugs I was addicted to. That was one of my first encounters in the skeptic or atheist community was or my
right.
favorite is, oh, I'm so glad you got out of that. And it was like, well, I only got out of it because I got like wrinkles and cellulite because you know what I'm saying? I got 50 staring me in the face. So, that's, hey, if I can keep doing it, I would, trust me.
Yeah, it
Um,
is amazing to realize how much Christianity is in the atheist community, um, with some of
I
those
don't,
beliefs not getting deconstructed as well.
I wouldn't even say that it's Christianity. So some of the people I know were not raised Christians, particularly
Right.
in the skeptic and science critical thinking community, right? They weren't. I mean, take, who we were talking about earlier. We were talking about, I don't know, fallen atheists or people that have not
Yeah.
necessarily stayed true to critical thinking or biology.
Mhm.
Um, and that it's that kind of sexism that just bleeds into it. But in my opinion, I think that sex scares people. I think open sexuality scares people. I think it makes them uncomfortable. Um, and I think that has to do with our culture as a whole, not necessarily
Mhm.
religion. And maybe it's been influenced by religion, but I think that it makes people nervous. I think it makes people uncomfortable. Um, and yeah, I think that's where it comes from.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I think it's a very Western thing. It's a very Muslim thing, but we don't see it in the Far East as much. Japan and China tend to be a little bit more open. Some parts of Northern Europe seem to be a little bit more open about it, which is why I say it's kind of a Christian thing. But really, it's just that kind of monotheistic. Abrahamic, prudes that keep coming through, and that's yeah. I think that's what's affecting us. So it's just it makes no sense to me. It's just sex. Why are we getting weird about it? Um, but and yet we do. Uh, um, but, I think this is stuff we need to talk about. I look at what's going on with Trump and the MAGA folks and everything else, and I think a lot of that comes from us not being able to talk about politics, not being able to talk about why certain things are bad and get that out in the open and spread some sunshine on it to disinfect it. And it's the same thing with sex. If we keep pushing it back, then the very unhealthy things are going to start happening. And are happening right now with sex trafficking, with you know abuse and purity culture and all the rest of it. It's like it. We got to talk about it. It's got to get out in the open. And I wish more people would.
Well, I actually spent Friday night, um, just a little rundown actually, hanging out with some old colleagues, and at some point, the Epstein thing came up again,
Hmm.
right? And we're talking about that, and we get it. We understand what it's like to um, have people make assumptions about you and have people afraid to come out and even talk about when they've been abused, because
Hmm.
that at some level you're going to get blamed, particularly when it comes to sex work. Is if you have a sex worker or you have somebody who has been abused or taken advantage of or trafficked, um, when they come out, there's an idea that, oh, well, they put themselves in that situation. Well, just because they put themselves in that situation doesn't mean that they deserve to get abused, but that is definitely the prevailing thing.
Right.
And even women outside of the sex industry, you're looked at, oh, well, what were you wearing? Where were you at? Oh, were you at a party? Did you leave your drink unattended? There's instance after instance after instance where, men get a slap on the wrist for abusing and hurting women. And there's some sense, and this isn't a religious thing. This is a cultural thing.
Hmm.
Um, where somehow it's the girl's fault. The fact that the word or the phrase statutory rape exists at all is a fucking problem, because it's not. You're either old enough to consent or you're not. And if you're not,
Right.
then you're not. And that's the end of it. It should be rape. It should not be whether if you're a 13-year-old girl and you're prancing around in front of a dude and they end up assaulting you. I don't give a fuck. That is still a child. That is still a child.
Hmm.
Period.
Yeah. Oh, and
So the
the
fact that
Republican defense that Epstein liked, 17 years and 10 months. Yeah, doesn't get him out of it. He liked him as young as 14 or 15. Is it South Carolina or North Carolina allows girls to get married at 13 or 14?
No, and
Uh,
actually in California right now, there's another so let me pitch another organization.
Go ahead.
Um there's a group working to end child marriage right now in
Good.
California, because there is no minimum age in California even to get married.
Really?
No.
I'm
No. And
surprised.
what really actually Unchained at Last, that's what it's called.
Uh-huh.
What's really actually horrific is that the ACLU actually is not behind this law. And this is something that absolutely just blew me the fuck away, because their argument is, which still doesn't make any sense to me, but their argument is that um, girls get married sometimes to escape an abusive family, which is fucking disgusting. It's
What?
just disgusting. Because if
How
you're getting,
the
yeah,
fuck
it,
did they
it, it
come up
doesn't,
with it?
I don't know. I don't know, but
That's
Unchained
not
at
a
Last
reason to
is
allow
a
child
good
marriage.
organization to support, and especially when they're coming up with votes and petitions and things like that to sign on to it, because there's no reason on earth that anybody under 18, and not even just from a sexual standpoint, but like that is a lifelong commitment, supposedly, right?
Mhm.
Or it's a contract. You know what I'm saying? Like I got out of ordering the what was it? Was it like 12 CDs for 5 cents? Was it like Columbia House, BMG? When I
Yeah.
was a kid, right? You used to fill out that postcard and you used to get all those free CDs. And then when the bill came due, you'd say, "Hey mom, hey mom, write them a letter and tell them that I was under 18 when I signed this so they can't enforce the contract." Boom, I got 12 free CDs, right?
Right, for a
Okay.
penny. Yeah.
So why the fuck would I have been allowed to get married if I wasn't allowed to sign up for a $12 a month CD club? You know,
Right.
there's no consistency there, and it's ridiculous. Well, my kid was 16, 17. I mean, I don't think he should get married now. He's 20. I
Right.
think it's a real fucking bad idea. Um, but you know what I'm saying? If these ages aren't arbitrary,
Right.
then what the fuck is statutory rape, and why are kids allowed to be getting married? And the vast majority of child marriages do come from religious families,
Oh, yeah.
and that's their justification for it, which is also not okay.
Yeah. I think it is North Carolina, but thousands of kids getting married, many of them to older, you know, adults. And it's disgusting. How is that even remotely possible? Um, and then you've got the pageants, and I don't think beauty pageants per se are bad. But when you're taking a 13-year-old and trying to make her look 20, that's a
Or a
problem.
5-year-old, or a
Yeah,
5-year-old, and you're giving them fake teeth and fake eyelashes. Yeah,
right.
that's a problem. Like that's not
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
When I was 21, I got scouted.
Well, real quick,
Um,
let
oh,
me.
sorry.
We do have a caller.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and this one I think is going to be all you because I have a very short answer. I think you'll probably have a better answer. Ember, who wants to talk about should sex work be legal? Hello, Ember. You're on with Jim and
Hello.
Erin.
Hi.
Morning.
What is your question? Should sex work be legal?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've seen we've drifted back and forth through purity culture and sex work and trafficking and all that sorts of stuff. And so it crossed my mind that if perhaps we were to legalize sex work and create industry standards and make it standardized kind of thing with healthcare, with employee numbers and all that assorted stuff. It would make trafficking a whole lot less easy, and it would also sort of normalize people's exposure to sex as a concept, as a thing that humans do that doesn't have to be hidden so much, perhaps.
I do think that full service sex work should be legal. So stripping pornography does fall under the umbrella of sex work. Um, and I think full service sex work should be legalized or decriminalized. And again, there is an organization called Old Pros, and they are advocates for that. There are certain ways that if full service sex work or prostitution is what we're really talking about, if that is legalized, the way that that happens, there's a specific way that it has to be done, or it's going to end up targeting minorities, LGBT, Q people if they're not doing things right. If you're adding in, say you're throwing in a bunch of licenses and things like that. So like in Nevada, well, in not Reno and not Vegas, they're right outside of there. I can't remember which counties there are. Um, you have to have licenses, business license, police card. Police card is similar to what you would need to work in a casino. But if you have somebody that's on the street or somebody that's really poor that's considering getting into sex work or something like that, and they can afford those licenses, well, they're going to go to like a black market. So they're putting themselves in danger at that point, not only because your clientele is not going to be vetted, but that makes you a target for the police. And if you're Black or trans, or you're running across a police officer, then that's going to be a way to target you. So I guess maybe that's kind of akin to like voter ID laws, right? Where some people might have a hard time going and getting to the DMV or getting to a place where they're having to find an, that kind of a thing, where it's an extra step that makes it hard, but it also makes them a target. So there's definitely a specific way that it needs to happen to make sure that it's fair all the way across the board. You're going to have some people that are independent contractors that are not going to like the idea of having to report everything. But I think that might be a trade-off to keep things safe. And like you said, to kind of normalize it, because it's never, ever, ever going to go away. So I think we need to find a way to make it safer, and make it something that is more an acceptable, consensual profession to do. And I think at that point, you're going to have a lot less abuse and trafficking. I mean, if you're trying to fight trafficking, and you have, people that are checking IDs and social security numbers and things like that to make sure that they're not having somebody that's like underage, that's going to go a long way.
I mean, just look at what happened with prohibition. Once alcohol was made illegal, all kinds of criminal organizations came about to provide it and made existing criminal organizations stronger. As soon as we made it legal again, a lot of that went away. So I see a lot of, I think too, you're talking about safety. There was a documentary I watched a long time ago, done in Paris, about prostitution and the history of it, and how when there were houses of prostitution, women were safer because these are the things they did and could do to limit abusive men from coming in. The group help they had for raising kids and all this, and a bunch of other stuff that they were doing that made it safer for the women. And then once all that was eliminated and they were forced to be out on the street, that's when a lot of the unsafe conditions came in for these women. And I think that that's something to think about too. If you really want it to be safe for everybody, then making it legal so that there's places to go and it's not just happening necessarily on the street. Although I don't have anything against that. I think there's a lot of ways to make it safer once we legalize it.
I'll make one more point on that, and then I'll answer a question in the chat. But I went to, when I was, I think, God, we were 18 or 19, and we were working at a club in Reno, a gentleman's club, and my friend and I decided we would go visit the Mustang Ranch, which, shocker, was actually shut down due to tax evasion. I know, crazy. And so we went there, and it functions, to my understanding, much like the Bunny Ranch does today. Dennis Hoff, the owner of that, actually died not too long ago, which is a great thing because he was a piece of shit. I met him personally. He's an asshole. And so, anyway, but they had food on site. They had hairdressers on site. They had call buttons in every room. Every customer was vetted. You had security. And they had health checks. So once a week, there were so many safeguards in place. And I remember at the time, of course, it was like ooky, because we went in there and we were like, we would never do this. So it was like this big, thing where we filled out the applications with fake stuff. And so that's how we got kind of all the skinny on how everything works. But like the Bunny Ranch, when I met Dennis Hoff, I met a few of his girls. And at the time they had that HBO show, right? And I'm talking to the girl, and she loved her job. She was just super excited to do. She loved what she did. She had a great time. She enjoyed sex. She loved the whole thing of it. She was safe. She made a ton of money. It was awesome. Like I said, Dennis Hoff in particular was just a piece of shit. But that worked for them. They were really happy. Now, one of the other girls I met was not happy, very obviously, because she was like completely hammered within like 5 minutes of meeting her. So that, I would say, was a bit of a red flag. I don't think she was super happy, but that seemed to be that seemed to work in that context, however that was. the question that was asked was, do I have recommendations for online workers? And so he's talking about age certification and that whole thing. So uploading your ID to a porn site is a really fucking bad idea. That's not okay. It doesn't make anybody safer, and it doesn't stop anybody from watching porn. Period.
No,
Doesn't fucking work.
I'm a software engineer, and I work for. Well, I won't mention the name of the company. I don't need to embarrass them. But part of what we were doing was trying to figure out how to verify somebody signing up for an account at a financial institution. And one of the things that we had to do was have them upload a driver's license. So one of the things that we did to test the third-party system was fake driver's license. We never, they never succeeded at catching everything we were doing. And that was just with basic tools. That wasn't with a good graphics tool or drawing tool or anything else. It was MS Paint. So it's a bad idea from a security point of view, but you're also uploading something that your driver's license, which has all your personal information and has a QR code, well, the equivalent of a QR code on it to get to all of your information. And that's really all you really need is that. And then they can replace your picture and all of a sudden they have your information and they are you for all intents and purposes. So yeah, bad idea all the way around.
One, it doesn't do anything to stop people from watching porn or to get really bad shit uploaded. Pornhub has been, I guess maybe because they're one of the most like prominent, they've been attacked mostly by these Christian anti-porn, anti-sex work. And what they use is they use the word trafficking, anti-trafficking groups. They don't give a fuck about trafficking. They could care less. It's a tool to make money is all it is, and manipulation. But Pornhub has done a ton to address underage videos and bad stuff online. And they have a better model right now. I'm trying to think of what the specifics of it is, but I believe they want internet providers a proof of age, so that you have rather than giving it to some random site, you have more accountability, right? You have people that kind of,
right.
and so then it makes them responsible. Which was also one of the things that, what was it? Something that Trump put into law. It's a carve out for social media companies. They can be held liable if a sex worker or somebody like that is posting online or doing something like that. They can be held liable for that, right? It's why sometimes if I try to advertise books, I get shut down. It's inappropriate. It happens a lot. And it's because of this particular
he
law.
took away the safe harbor laws? Because it used to be if you're considered a common carrier that you couldn't get tagged, that you couldn't be prosecuted for that.
So you can't get in trouble right now for online content, right? For what your users post, right? You can't get in trouble for that unless it's sex work or looks like it could be sex work. Then they can get held. And what is it? Section something 230 or some shit. Because he was like, "Oh, let's get rid of it," and I was like, there was this big like thing. But yeah, no, it basically makes it so it attacks sex work, and it makes sex work less safe because they're not able to vet clients as easier as they would. And it attacks. I can't promote books a good portion of the time. If I use any kind of exotic dancer or stripper, people just automatically assume that that's what that is because they're being extra careful because they can get in trouble for it. But they can't get in trouble for, posting, the last time I was on Twitter, some of the shit on there, it's amazing that that there's no consequences for posting that kind of stuff. But if you're a hooker and you're trying to sell a blowjob, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like this whole big like capital fucking offense.
Yeah, and on TikTok, if somebody's talking about being an accountant, they're not talking about doing numbers. They're talking about doing something, but not numbers. Or spicy something, so they come up with all these code words, and then the sites don't ban the code words, which it would just be a moving target anyway. We just come up with new code words. And so it doesn't
Yeah,
really do anything. It's not effective. Pardon?
I said it's just dog whistles from a different direction. Like instead of
Mhm.
political dog whistles, it's illicit content dog whistles. But the point
Uh-huh.
is there's plausible deniability, but everybody who's in the target audience knows exactly what's being talked about.
Right. It's keeping the letter of the law, not the spirit, because the spirit of the law sucks.
But ultimately, I think as long as we're shaming that, there's a lot of just non-acceptance or stigmas around any kind of sex work, no matter what it is. Like when I was a dancer, when you're in the club and you're talking to people or whoever they are, bachelor party, whatever, they're so excited to meet you and everything's all great. And you're like the greatest, but get outside of there and all of a sudden, you're a whore, you're a hooker, you're a slut, you're this and that, you're just a piece of shit. And it's like, well, you didn't think that a little while ago, or you were lying. But
Mhm.
it's, there's that huge stigma around it. Any kind of sex work, and the stigma exists for customers as well. And so I think that if we can move more towards acceptance of sexuality, and sex, just that it exists and it's not a wrong thing, I think it'll be easier to make any kind of sex work, be it online or in person or whatever, safer. There's a reason that serial killers target, um,
Mhm.
prostitutes and sex workers, even strippers will freaking go missing and nobody gives a shit because they're like, oh, well, she must have, she put herself in a bad situation. So there's an unspoken assumption that she deserved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true for a lot of groups. Homeless people, all sorts of minorities. With ICE running around lately, a brown person could vanish and just nobody cares. They just assume ICE got them.
Well, the people do care. We're seeing that in the protests. There are people keeping track of it, and slowly, I think that to some degree they're going to be held responsible, whether it's before Trump is out of office or during. Um, we'll have to see, but I think there's the DOJ for some reason opened up an investigation into how many U.S. citizen ICE has held without cause. Um, so
Yeah, I would
maybe.
dare to say that it's not that people don't care that they're missing. I know, and here in California, I'm really close to Central California, where we grow a lot of food. We have a lot of migrants, a lot of immigrants.
Mhm.
Um, Mexican culture has been integrated in California forever. I mean, because it was Mexico at some point.
Right.
So at least people in my community, I mean, they care a lot. It's a matter of what you can do to get in the way. I'm 5 foot nothing. For the people who've never met me in person, and I tell you what, man, I would get right in the fucking face of somebody that I saw trying to take somebody. Um, Period. So I do think people care because it's more on the it's so out there, what's happening. Thankfully, I haven't seen it in
Suppose
my
I
particular community.
should rephrase. It's not that nobody cares. It's that people care in general, but more specifically, when someone goes missing, they just assume it's ICE rather than, say, traffickers. Like nobody looks into it.
Today, there probably is an assumption that it is ICE if they have a good tan, or happen to be Hispanic or So yeah, I think today that is true, right? And that is true since January 20th. So it's a new thing, but yeah, and honestly, I mean, why wouldn't you assume that it was ICE? If they're the Hispanic, LGBTQ, or just looked at the ICE agent wrong.
I
Yeah, and
almost
we've been
want to see
seeing
them because
reports
I want to
all
see
over
their
the
face.
internet.
I won't even have to touch them to make them cry. Like, but it's not, you know, I'm fortunate in a place where that's not really happening. At least as an activist right now, our biggest concern is basically the megachurch, who basically is the reason I'm here in the first place. Has taken over a school board up in one of our red counties. But yeah, we haven't seen it. But yeah, what I like is watching the ICE videos where people are confronting them and calling them big pieces of shit, because what they are is like, I know men that have issues with the word toxic masculinity, but that's what this is. And these guys
Mhm.
are big fat fucking pussies. And just give me a chance. Just give me a chance to get into them. I will make them go home and cry in their pillow. Like, not like, yeah,
Get video
ridiculous.
of it. Get video of it because we want to see it. Yeah.
People love those videos.
Pardon?
People love the videos of making ICE agents cry or outrunning them because they're so often out of shape, or just laughing at the stats, like half of them fail an open book test and can't be hired anyway. Different things like that, or the parody recruitment videos, like, do you hate minorities and want 50K? Come be an ICE agent today.
Right.
Well, and
Yeah.
bringing it back around to Jesus is, I do think that Jesus was pretty freaking clear when it came to immigrants. Like, full stop. If
Oh,
there's one
it's not
thing,
just Jesus. It's not just Jesus. It is a lot of the Old Testament is because so people forget that in those times there was no such thing as you never had a border patrol. Um, Borders were really, really fluid, and so you had people living among you had foreigners living amongst everybody. So this wasn't new. I've got yeah, here it is. So Leviticus 19:33 through 34. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. Deuteronomy, he defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow and loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing. Exodus, do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt, which is why the Bible's kind of, on this rant. Zechariah, this is what the Lord Almighty said: administer true justice, show mercy and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the foreigner, or the poor. Matthew, for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. And it's very clear that if you are a Christian and pro-ICE, you are on the wrong side of the Bible. There's no way to be on the right side of the Bible and be a Christian and be ICE.
well, I think the glaring inconsistency is that the vast majority of us, it's not like we're Native Americans. I'm like four different things. We're all mutts. And frankly, I mean, being a layman, I'm pretty sure that like a really tiny gene pool is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention just culturally. I mean, could you imagine if all we had was, um, various European foods, what are we gonna eat? And fucking potatoes and beans and shit. Like, I mean, come on, man. Like, I'm gonna have Chinese food tonight.
Yeah.
you know, like there's I- undoubtedly, if you look at our country, like the greatest thing about it is the fact that we do have such a mix of cultures, in the fact that we've influenced each other's cultures, but we are still able to maintain our own. Like we can still appreciate our, like, my Irish heritage. Like, I can still appreciate that while appreciating the fact and incorporating other cultures and traditions and stuff to be who we are. There's nothing that makes us more American than immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
And from a practical, logistical sense, from an economic sense, the whole thing I just don't get, other than the fact that it makes a convenient enemy
Yeah.
to rally against. And we all know, well, I'm sure most of us probably know how that ends up historically.
Yeah. Never, never, ever good.
But yeah, our
Um,
country would suck if it wasn't for immigrants. In fact, most of us wouldn't even be here. So I just think it's I
Even Red Hat knows that. That's why he wants to bring in 600,000 immigrants. After all his talk and all his effort putting billions into ICE, he went. I don't know if you heard, because he spews so much nonsense, it's impossible to keep up with all of it. But he did an interview recently where he told the interviewer he was going to bring in 600,000 Chinese students because we've deported so many people, half our universities are going to have to close. So
Right.
we need more people from overseas to keep our universities populated.
Yeah. Trump is not a Christian. He's not right wing. He wants to stand with winners and he doesn't care what the winners are. And he wants to be popular. So that's what he's going to do. He has no ideology other than narcissism.
no,
That's his
and dare I
ideology.
say, and like I'm gonna get kicked off the show and nobody's ever gonna talk to me again, but dare I say I do believe that Trump is our first atheist president. I
Yes,
uh I
I
don't,
completely agree with you.
and I
I,
think the fact that he's starting to stare mortality in the face is when he started to talk about, oh, I need to get into heaven. And so I think he might be starting to think about that stuff now because I mean he's very obviously got some
well,
health shit going on. But uh yeah, I don't he doesn't believe in anything but himself. And that was actually the scariest thing. I was at work when he was elected the first time. So it was the middle of the night, right? And they took all the sports off the TVs, which was, I hate sports in the strip club, dude. Huge, huge pet peeve because you shouldn't be. That's not where I
don't
want your attention.
distract. Yeah.
It's not. That's not
That's
helpful.
entertainment.
I hate that. Having the election was worse because I'm like watching it. And it was a Tuesday night. I used to work Tuesdays because I generally had a lot of like regulars and stuff. So it was a great night. It was nice and slow, chill, and I'm watching it. And thankfully, I had a my DJ that night was politically aligned with me. So we're both watching in like terror. And I told my son, who, God, was he, like 10 at the time? I was like, he was really worried about Trump getting elected because he saw his behavior, like just the way he acted on TV. And he's
Right.
like, Mom, there's no way somebody like that could be president, right? Like, and like I said, he was special needs. So when he saw the mimicking of the disabled reporter, that was like horrifying. He heard the pussy thing, which was ridiculous. Like, how are you a parent and vote for that guy? Because he's like, Mom, you can't do that. Like, that's not okay. And it's like, no shit. Good boy. He did a good job. That's not okay in anything. So I'm totally like convincing him that he's going to get it. And then we like slowly watch the stuff come in and he's winning. And I remember thinking, we know narcissists. Like some of the girls are like all excited. And I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Like, you have to understand that our best customers are misogynistic narcissists because they're so easy to manipulate. And it's like, do you want somebody like that who's that easily swayed by anything at all? You just have to tell him he's pretty. That's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything else.
Yeah.
You can have anything in the whole world. Look at what he just did with the communist mayor. You don't.
Right.
There's no worse leader than an extreme narcissist. And I have people that are like totally conned by him, and they're like, they're so excited, these girls, and I'm like, he's our best customer.
Yeah.
He's the easiest one. You could drain him in a heartbeat. Like, what the fuck? But nobody listens to
Yeah.
the stripper. That's all I'm gonna say.
And they probably should.
They really okay. So when it comes to like when it comes to that kind of stuff, like we're kind of a mini like sociological experiment. Like we have a lot of knowledge when it comes to people and personalities. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, because you've got
anyway.
to, just like bartenders and anybody else who's got to deal with customers to get money out of them. You learn very quickly how to do it.
Well, and
Um,
yeah.
Why,
Yeah,
and
no, it was very frustrating. I feel like I'm screaming into the void, and people are like, "Hey, dummy, shut up and take your top off." And I was like, "But wait, this is important. I swear."
Well, there was a study done some years ago. I think it was in the 80s. Might have been the early 90s, where they figured out that the best people to determine what the economy was doing were trash people, because they're in touch with what we throw away and how much we throw away, which is an indication of how much we're buying. And when we're throwing away barely used furniture, the economy must be doing really well, right? These kinds of things. And I'm wondering if the same might be true for strippers as well, because you're getting spendable money, right? You're not
No,
getting, typically
we
you're not
are
getting rent money.
absolutely no one of the best indicators of disposable income.
Mhm.
It just is. I was
Right.
down in Vegas when the crash happened in 2008, and like no shit, one day everything was hopping and booming and it was great. And the
Mhm.
next night it was like crickets in Vegas.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it was
have you
like
seen
it
what's
was
happening in Vegas now?
no, I mean I haven't been
The
to
strip is crickets. There's nobody on the strip anymore.
Mm, that's
Yeah.
probably yeah, that's that's probably not a great sign. Um,
Yeah.
but it's pretty glaring. At least it was then. And then
Yeah.
the one customer that came in, who was all excited was a financial advisor. He's like, I'm doing great. And I was like, God, you're kind of a shithead. He's like, everybody's fucking freaking out. And I was like, and you're cashing in and like bragging about it. So
Right.
cool.
Are you in touch
Yeah.
with the strippers now? That community is what are they seeing, a downturn or an upturn in the economy today? I
My,
mean,
I mean, my OG girls that I hung out with on Friday, you know, we're all staring 50 in the face. So they probably don't have their finger on it.
right.
But I did talk to, my DJ. Um, Unfortunately, we stayed up late enough to actually see him come home 5 in the morning. And yeah, he says no, it's just everything's changed. I mean, they're doing well enough to where you know, he's going to be okay. But yeah, no, he said it sucks. And then the girls, the whole industry has just changed. COVID took a lot of people online.
Uh-huh.
And it just really changed the interaction of everything, which I also think is a really bad sign. I think not not having personal interaction of any kind
Right.
is I don't think it's really great for us, just as a society. Um,
Yeah, it really. Harvard has done a study for over 80 years now on happiness and what it takes to be happy, and the number one thing is social interaction. How many people do you actually talk to day to day? Is a direct cause
well,
of happiness. So
you have a different sense of people. Um, you know, because a lot of people are asking me, "Oh, why don't you have an OnlyFans?" Well, that's actually because I had a teenage son, and after he found out what I did, he was like, "Mom, you're gonna find me hanging from the rafters if I ever find out you have an OnlyFans." And I was like, "Okay, so that's a pretty good deterrent."
yeah.
But you know, part of it is people are so different when they're hiding behind a screen.
Hmm.
You know, even when it's like in the club where you meet somebody in the front of the house, right? And they're with their friends and they're whatever, they're going to act a lot differently. You get them back in the VIP room and it's a completely different person. That machismo, that whole thing goes away and you actually like get to know somebody. And when you're staring somebody in the face, no matter what your disagreements are, you know, it's a lot harder to hate them. It's a lot harder to ignore the fact that you're talking to another human being. Um, and I think just you know, social media and the internet in general. Again, I'm probably not going to get invited back because I'm like, hey, YouTube, get off it, you know. Um, but yeah, I think it's been really bad because it's hard to hate somebody face to face, man. It's hard to look at somebody and really, you know, really treat them the way that some people treat, um, you know, some stranger on the internet.
Yeah, there's a guy who talked. He's a black guy who's convinced. Daryl Davis, I think, is who he is. Is the name of the guy? Yeah, Daryl Davis. Over 200 Ku Klux Klan members to turn in their sheets just because he sat down and talked to them. Um, that's powerful. Just sitting down and talking.
Well, if you look at like, so Dan Barker is the co-president of
Mhm.
Freedom from Religion Foundation. His book Godless explains how he went from like super hardcore, like traveling pastor, musician, which is funny because he sings like atheist songs now, which is great. We're hosting him in January, and he talks about how his version of religion was so restrictive that as he would go from town to town and he would meet people that had slightly different beliefs, he was like, well, I couldn't hate them. I couldn't I was supposed to not like them. They were supposed to not be real Christians. And
Mhm.
so he started to incorporate their ideas into his own ideology because it gave him a way to accept them as people. And then at some point,
Right.
obviously he got to the point where he was, now he's like,
Yeah.
Mr. Atheist. Um, actually that was somebody else. He's a dick. And so uh
Mm.
it's that whole face-to-face interaction. Like American History X actually gives you a really good
Yeah.
idea of how that works, right? The guy's working close with a black guy, and all of a sudden he's like, this isn't, this is like a human being in front of me, and I
Right.
like him, and it's weird. And I guess I have to change my whole everything. But I think that's how we change ideas. That's how we grow as people, is to meet other people, including books.
Mhm.
It's one of the reasons why I read as much as I do, and because obviously I like writing, but even fiction, nonfiction, whether or not you agree with everything 100%, you are getting the perspective of another human being through somebody else's eyes. And create a that's how we create a collective and an understanding of reality as a whole. As an individual, we don't see reality unless we're able to understand other people's perspective and have a collective idea of how everything works. And we need to interact with other people. And I think that that's really how we evolve as a society, how we stay together.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, that interaction is why I think having conversations about difficult topics is so important. Coming back to that, um, and also
Um,
why I think that trade embargoes are stupid, because trade is a way that ideas travel on trade, and so if you want to change people's mind, trade with them. They'll eventually figure it out. The spread of ideas happens that way.
so
Um,
Another question. I know we're getting close on time, or
yeah.
we're past time, but is asked: is online easier to get rid of people just click and they're gone, as opposed to trying to um, get rid of somebody in the club? Well, in the club you have bouncers. They're fabulous, most of them, especially if you tip them well. They will absolutely get rid of anybody, and I mean that in not a death way, by the way, just to be clear.
Yeah. They may go
But they're
flying
gone.
through a door, but yeah,
Eh, you know.
depending
Um,
on you.
the internet, I've had one or two really bad, scary people, and I got to tell you, they scare me more, because I don't know who they are. I had one guy when I was on Twitter that I actually thought was five guys. Uh, Thankfully, it was just one, and I was actually like super relieved to find out it was just the one dude. But even that was still really scary, because no matter how many times he got banned or whatever, he just kept coming back.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And maybe I'm an old lady, but I'm not a huge fan
It's
of
just,
that kind of
stalkers
stuff
are a
online.
problem, and it's harder online to know who. I mean, if you meet somebody face to face and you decide they're a threat, you know what they look like, so you can avoid them next time you see them. Much harder to do online.
Well,
Much
and
harder to
also I
do.
think it's the abuse that happens online is happening behind a screen.
Yeah.
I feel like they're more, I think that they're more comfortable um saying and doing those things than they are in person.
Yeah. It definitely gives them that bit of, because nobody's judging them, right? We know that people tend to be more ethical when they think they're being observed than otherwise. So yeah, um, it's really ridiculous. But we are starting to get a little bit over time. Erin, it has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it immensely. Um, and if you just kind of want to give, where can people find you, and whatever you want to uh, promote, that would be good too.
ErinLouis.com is really the best way to find my latest books, articles, and actually had an article come out in The Humanist. Was it September? My first one. Hopefully, I'll write for them again. ErinLouis.com. It has links to my socials, and like I said, My books, I have a new book coming out in April. I have a series about a atheist stripper that goes to heaven that is probably of most interest to this particular crowd. Anyway, she gets to heaven and it sucks. I'm working on the third installment of that. If you're a Slayer fan, it helps too because they're all named after Slayer songs. South of Heaven is the name of the series. I'm going to have at least 2 short stories or coming out next year also. So
Cool. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I wish we had a few more callers, but the one had an interesting question at the very least. So, well, folks, we're going to call this a night. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, do all those things. Share the stream, and also do some encouraging of people to call us next time. And we'll see you next time, same place, same time. Bye.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk. This
Hello,
is
everybody. You
Hello.
guys did great.